right, it is March 30th. This is the PFF Forecast, our last podcast of March. Feels like it's been a whole year, maybe two that have elapsed. But we got some fun stuff. We did another mock today, so we're going to run down, go through the whole mock. We're going to talk about Colin Cowherd's awesome list of top rosters in the NFL, because that's what we're doing right now. It's talking about top things in the NFL. And then we may have little draft capital stuff at the end, if I can just say that word. And I have a good story for you, Eric, on the Cincy away from home quarantine why. So nice. Let's rock. Eric, how you doing, brother? Are you alive over there?
I'm doing pretty well. I had a weekend of coding, of watching the Tiger King, and then
Can I get how you ended up watching the Tiger King? Because you'll do just about anything to watch something you can gamble on. So for you to watch the Tiger King, I feel like that's a real departure from the norm.
Well, I have continued to gamble on NFL 2K or whatever it's called, Madden 2K, to 2020, whatever it is, which is, it passes the time. But no, my good friend Sean, who moved here right before the lockdown, kept texting me, telling me to watch the show. My wife, I think, was on her last wits, and so we watched it together, and it was amazing. My wife is from a small town in Wisconsin. There are Amish people that are closer to her than like non-Amish people. I was going to say normal people, but like non-Amish people, and so she was very amused by it. Me I feel like I'm a lot closer to you on the, dare I say, culturally aloof, maybe. I don't know about I'm closer to civilized to you as I am to like them, of course, but I did grow up in the Midwest, so it was sort of amusing to me, the entire thing, really.
Who do you think's the craziest person on that show?
Oh, the woman, Carol.
Okay.
Yeah, she's a nut job.
Hey, you cute little cats and kittens. I thought about opening the podcast like that, but I just didn't think I'd be able to do it justice. So
no,
I decided not to.
As somebody who because the thing is, it's not the outwardly crazy people that you got to be worried about, right?
Yes.
It's it's the pastor that is, how you doing, everybody? That guy, that's the nuts person. It's the woman who, frankly, was kind of a rocket when she was younger, growing up to be a crazy, hey, I'm an environmentalist, but now I'm now I'm just a grifter when I'm older. But I don't look. She kind of looks crazy, but she doesn't look crazy. That's the person you got to worry about.
The fact that her ex-husband or former deceased husband disappeared is super weird.
Do we even know that, though?
Right. Right. Maybe he's still living his best life. And then the fact that her now current husband is just the most average normal person that you'd expect to see in random suburbia in Virginia. The fact that he's her husband now is so weird. She is definitely the weirdest person. I do think the guy who thinks he's an Indian god, Doc Antle, I believe is his name, is right up there. It's definitely not Joe Exotic. Joe Exotic just has a meth problem and is gay. And so that makes him, super unique. But yeah, man, that show is nuts.
It combined everything, right? It combined like you said, he's crazy hicks with obviously sprinkling in the gay thing, and then this woman here just feeding her husband at tigers, yeah. I mean, yeah,
it's it's about as crazy as probably a whole season's worth of the NFL packed into just one
well, every once in a while we're given a gift like that. Making of a Murderer was totally
true.
Late 2015, I was still doing data for us, and I watched an entire one during a game. I watched an entire series during a game, and it was and that was only a few miles away from where I live. So it was oh, hey. But yeah, every once in a while we get this look into leaning into the craziness that is in our country, and weirdly we don't get any more sane.
That's the tricky thing is I'm watching this and I'm like, wow, these people are fucking out of their mind. And then I'm also here like eating uncontrollably, like in quarantine. And I'm not that much more sane. Okay, let's start with this because you sent this to me probably 5 minutes before we started recording. Just Colin Cowherd's top 8 NFL rosters. I'm going to list them out to you. Ravens are 1, Vikings are 2, Niners are 3, Chiefs are 4, Chargers are 5, the Browns are 6, the Saints are 7, and the Steelers are 8. I think I already know your answer to this. Which one is the most ridiculous?
If you turn that rating upside down and said the Vikings were the 31st best roster, it would make more sense than saying they're the second best roster.
Yeah, I don't get that one. So there are 3 that stick out to me here. The Vikings at number 2 is by far the most ridiculous. The Browns at 6 and the Steelers at 8, I think are borderline laughable being in the top 10. And I'm trying to figure out because I didn't watch this segment, I'm assuming he discussed this on his show. I'm trying to think about what his rationale is.
Oh, I know what it is. I have COVID-19.
Here's the thing about Colin Cowherd. He's super smart and he gets what he's doing. Like he has to do a show by himself for like multiple hours a day during coronavirus. So like, God help you.
Yeah.
But how do you rationalize this? Because he is also holds himself in high regard where like, I'm not going to just be hot take guy.
Right.
So is his rationale like quarterbacks and guards are all weighted equally? And I'm just.
The Vikings are bad at guard too.
Well, yeah.
Like they're bad the Viking, like that list makes sense if you ignore quarterback, wide receiver, offensive line, defensive line, and deep defensive back.
Yeah, I mean, it's tough because he's clearly not trying to do the 8 best teams. Because if you're doing the 8 best teams, obviously the Vikings aren't number 2. And when you say best, you have to rate the quarterback higher.
Yeah.
So he's got to be thinking to himself, okay, what do these have like almost if you went like position group by position group and you were like, okay, all things being equal. Right? I don't understand how else you get this list. Because the Chargers, like, right, Tyrod sucks relative to the other quarterbacks on this list, but they have a really great roster everywhere else.
And the Chargers aren't that offensive there. I mean,
No.
The only issue is that it's a question mark as to whether Anthony Lynn is good. Their offensive line's cheeks, and like, but they're not bad. They're not a bottom 10 roster for sure. So it makes more sense that they're in the top 10 than they're in the bottom 10. The Vikings.
I need someone to explain to me how the Vikings, Browns, and Steelers have a better roster than the Cowboys, for example. Right?
Mm-hmm.
By the way, I got a phone call. My phone is on silent. I ignored Chris Collinsworth's phone call.
He just called me.
Oh, there you go.
So he must want to get a hold of one of us.
I'm guessing that Chris read an article about something mathematical and would like it explained to him. That's my guess.
Or people are dragging our mock and he's trying to reel us in. Yeah.
Maybe. In which case I'm glad we ignored it. Which team is not on this list that's the most egregious? Because I think the Cowboys come to mind.
Yeah. Cowboys are a great roster.
Like definitely offensively. Now the tough thing is I'm sure he's not weighting offense more than defense, which makes it kind of a challenge because that's how we normally think. Who are some other ones that should be on this list?
I think Tampa Bay.
Yep. Tampa Bay, definitely.
Tampa Bay's got a really good, obviously wide receiving core. Their offensive line's okay. Their defense is a lot better than people give them credit for. Oh, by the way, I wagered on the Atlanta Falcons in a simulated game. It worked out about as well as a real Falcons game. Falcons came to my mind. That doesn't
surprise me at all.
But they are they're not a team in the top 10. Let me think. Colts?
The Colts are interesting. So I think here are 2 that I think are on the borderline. The Colts and the Packers. Because I think the Packers, as much as they were fraudulently good with respect to their record, they do have a pretty well-rounded roster, right? Like, is there really a part of their roster that you'd be like, oh, that's below average?
No. Some people would say quarterback, but we're not in that camp yet. I mean, he's probably not
far.
He might not be top 10 anymore, but he's certainly top 15. I'm trying to think.
Like, I think you make a case for the Colts. The problem with the Colts is
you just don't know about the QB. What about
but also their receivers kind of suck.
Yeah.
It's not like their coverage is great.
So here's the thing. We'll give him crap for the Vikings because it is egregious, but
egregious at 2 specifically.
But he's hitting on something. So you think, okay, let's think about the NFC West, which we think of as a tough division. Seattle's roster top to bottom isn't that good. Arizona's roster top to bottom still isn't all that good. San Francisco's on this list, as they should be. The Los Angeles Rams roster is an atrocity at this point.
Agree.
You can't, so you pick one out of that division. You pick the right team in the Niners. The AFC West, I think the Chargers and the Chiefs both deserve to be here, in Las Vegas and Denver don't. The AFC South, that division, I mean, maybe Tennessee, but their defense is horrible. So I'm not offended by no AFC South teams. AFC East, New England's tearing it down. Buffalo probably deserves to be on here. I mean,
Buffalo's a good call.
If the Vikings are on here, the Buffalo Bills are better than the Vikings at everything except for quarterback.
Okay, let's do our top 8.
Okay. Go ahead.
I would go. I would still go with the Ravens at 1.
For sure. Yep.
I would go. This one is tricky. So I'm inclined to go Chiefs at 2.
Yeah, you don't have to though. Go Niners.
But here's the thing. I think all things being equal, right? It's hard for us to not overweight Mahomes.
Yep. And head coach. I think Reed is slightly better than Shanahan.
Agree. So let's go Niners 2.
And then Chiefs 3. Yeah.
I think that's fair.
I think Buffalo is 4 for me.
Really?
Mm-hmm. Where's Buffalo weak besides QB?
I guess the receivers now are pretty strong. Their coverage is above average.
They rush the passer really well. Or they have good pass rushers.
And their coach is good.
And their offensive line's fine. Hey, Bills Mafia, we're giving you some love.
I have a hard time going with them over the Saints.
Oh, sure. Yeah. The Saints don't have a whole lot of weaknesses. So let's go Saints 4.
But I think you can make the case for Buffalo at 5.
Mm-hmm.
Now, here's an interesting one. Would you put the Chargers, the Cowboys, or the Bucks next? I think those are the 3.
Well, I think Cowboys are clearly next. Especially, losing Jones is tough, but it's hard to get, especially if we're downweighing quarterback a little bit, it's tough to get better than that offensive line, even without Frederick. Amari Cooper, Michael Gallup, they lose Jason Witten, which is addition by subtraction. The defensive line is pretty stout. Their linebackers should rebound this year, and they're pretty good in this. Well, they're not pretty good in the secondary, but they got Clinton Dix, and they did lose Jones. This is showing sort of how, if you're the Niners, Chiefs, Ravens, if you're a young team with a good roster, if you don't fuck up the next 10 years, you're going to have a pretty good go of it, because it's sort of hard to find teams that are worthy, that don't have significant flaws. But I go Dallas here.
Now, would you go Chargers or Bucks next?
Bucks.
Okay, I'm with you there, because I think the quarterback is clearly better, and I think actually all the other things are pretty similar.
Yeah, the Chargers have a better secondary, but the Bucks aren't that far behind, and they have draft picks.
True. But the Chargers do as well. So the Chargers are 6 coming in. I would go with the Chargers after them. So what do we have? We have 1 spot left.
Yeah.
Who would you go with number 8? Would you put your Vikings?
No, they're not my Vikings. I actually don't hate the Browns.
Interesting. Yeah, I think I can get on board with that too, actually.
Because the Browns' offensive line, they got Conklin. They're probably going to take a tackle in the first round, whatever. Baker's a pretty good quarterback that I think people are going to sleep on this year. Hunt and Chubb are like, honestly, Hunt and Chubb are like running backs that actually, in my opinion, if any running backs move the needle in the NFL, it's those two. Beckham and Landry are very good. They have Njoku, they have Hooper.
They have a good draft pick coming in.
Myles Garrett's the number one overall pick. He's pretty damn good. Denzel Ward's good. Greedy Williams is good. Like, there's not a whole lot. Like, honestly, Freddie Kitchens really fucked that up because it was like pretty good roster.
Nope, I think that speaks volumes. The big thing that I kind of took away from this is that if you're Cam Newton, like, you are praying that the Chargers say,
come
hey,
to their senses.
Yeah, because like the only thing here that is shocking to me in doing this is that you have a team. All of these teams have above average quarterbacks to average. I mean, the Browns and the Bills are a little iffy, but they at least have a quarterback in place. You don't have top 8 rosters out there that are just like, hey, we need a quarterback, So the Cam Newton obviously has got to be hoping the Chargers give him a chance. And then secondarily, Justin Herbert's got to be like, please, God, please let it be the Chargers.
And what this shows is, as I said, we're going to talk about this when we talk about our mock draft. But, I think the Chiefs and the Ravens are going to be here for a while. I think there's a lot more certainty in Patrick Mahomes than there is Lamar Jackson. But let's be real, the Ravens, if they're good, are going to hang on to it longer than anybody in the league. This is a very important offseason for the San Francisco 49ers because they currently have the league by, at least the NFC, by the balls. And if they don't screw it up, they could have, it could be like it was in the 80s or 90s for them, where they're always in it because they have a great coach, they have a good team with good coach, with a good front office. And, if they're smart about it, they could be a pretty solid team for a long time.
It's a good point. All right. Analytics mock. People are already very angry about this. Here's what we're going to do. We introduce trades. So we have a couple of trades. We have a trade/trade scenario or two that we'll talk about. Also, I'm already getting very annoyed by these headphones. My AirPods are just like not working. And shockingly, it's driving me insane. We're going to go 5 picks at a time. We'll spend a couple of minutes on each kind of set of 5. You can go to pff.com and read the rationale for all of these and read about the methodology. But real quick, the one thing that keeps coming up is, the NFL draft will never look like this. You guys are idiots. That's not our goal. Our goal is not to predict what would or what will actually happen. It's to say what we would do if we were making each pick. So that's a very important delineation. We'll start it off. Bengals keep the first pick. They go Joe Burrow. At 2, we have Miami trading with Washington. We have them trading 5, 18, and 39 for number 2. They take Tua. Number 3, the Lions stay there. They take Okudah, cornerback from Ohio State. And number 4, this is a pick that maybe more people got mad about than anything else, which is Henry Ruggs going to the Giants at 4. And then at 5, Washington moved back, and they take Chase Young. Big takeaways from the top 5.
Remember 2 years ago when we all thought Tampa Bay was going to take Derwin James and they traded out of the 7th pick and we thought they were idiots, and then Derwin James is still there for them at 11 or 12, and they still took Vita Vea. I said sometimes things work out, right? Because there could be I don't think Chase Young gets to 5 in the real NFL, but sometimes teams value things differently, and you can often get Chase Young deeper in the draft, and that's what happens here. I like that, and I think that there's a non-zero chance that it happens.
So the Miami pick, or Miami trading up with Washington, the other side of it is also really interesting because they are in a position where I don't think next year they have a chance to make this jump. They have too good of a team and are in too bad of a division. Like, Ryan Fitzpatrick is not going to allow them to go 2-14 if we play 16 games next year. So this is almost their chance, like their only chance, right? And And part of it is also that they're in a position where Washington is looking for an excuse to keep Dwayne Haskins as their quarterback. So to me, it's the perfect storm for Miami to move up and grab Tua, because the team in 2 is not dying to get a quarterback. Whereas next year, you may have a team that actually gets the number 2 overall pick that is like, hey, come hell or high water, we're taking Lawrence or Fields or whoever else is there.
Right. 2016 was that way, where the Rams and Eagles had to, trade a decent amount to move up to that spot. Those 2 spots. 2015 was that way as well. So yeah, at this point in time, cherish the opportunity where the second pick is going to be, could go either way, and you do have some bargaining power, right? When you say, well, we'll keep the pick and do this type of thing. Especially when you have a quarterback in your back pocket in Dwayne Haskins. So yeah, they get some value here. We got them at 5, 18, and 39. And they're not a very good team. The Alex Smith contract really hurt them. They're paying him a lot of money not to play right now, and so they need some cheap young talent.
You think if they actually move up to 2, that assortment of picks will get it done?
If Miami does, yeah. Oh, I think so. I mean, 5 to 2 is not that much.
Yeah. I think there are some people that might be like, wow, you only had to give that up. But I was initially like that, and I came around. I want to say one thing about
39 is like a first-round pick almost anyway.
True. True. I want to say one thing about the Giants at 4, because this is driving people insane. If you want to disagree with this pick, and you want to do so because you're idiots because you think a receiver is more valuable than an edge player, then you should go watch some football. You should learn a few things about how math works and actually try and read some of the literature about this. And I'm not trying to sound like a total douchebag here, but you're just parroting an old narrative if that's your argument. If you want to argue with this pick, I think it's perfectly fine for you to go, hey, I actually think Jerry Jeudy is better than Henry Ruggs, or I think CeeDee Lamb is better than both the Alabama guys. Yep. Because those are close. We went with the one that projected the best by a very small margin. I have no problem with you arguing about Jerry Jeudy versus Henry Ruggs. I think that's a really interesting conversation. But if you want to come in here yelling and ranting and raving about how valuable the edge position is in the year 2020, just shut the fuck up. You're an idiot.
Yeah, it's not great, but it's one of those, again, I think with the wide receiver spot, there are some situations where I think Jeudy is better, Lamb is better, but it's a styles make fight type of thing. And currently I almost said San Francisco Giants, the New York Giants need a deep threat, right? The one that, Ruggs represents. And I think at that particular spot, what you do when you give Daniel Jones as wide and as varied of an offense as you're going to give him here is you give him no excuses. The worst thing that can happen to the New York Giants this year, I can't stress this enough, is the 2018 Bears or the 2019 Bills, right? The worst thing that can happen is you draft Chase Young, he gets 20 sacks, and then you go 9-7 and make the playoffs, and then he falls short in one game, and you spend an entire offseason saying, well, we don't really know that much. We need to get another year out of Daniel. No, fail quickly or find out he's a good quarterback. Do it quickly, though.
Yep. All right.
I mean, you're going to give up Justin Fields.
10. Oh, you're dead on. All right, here we go. 6 through 10. So the Chargers go with – we haven't taken Jerry Jeudy because they signed Bulaga. We have the Panthers at 7, taking Isaiah Simmons from Clemson. 8, the Cardinals. Now they have Hopkins. They go Tristan Wirfs. Jacksonville at 9, they go Andrew Thomas. And then 10, Cleveland takes Josh Jones. Thoughts on those 5?
No, I think all these tackles are good. Good positions. It's a spot of need for a lot of teams. But the Jeudy to the Chargers thing makes too much sense. Mike Williams is, teetering on whether or not he's going to be a player that they consider working out. They got him at 7 a couple of years ago. Keenan Allen's a guy who's awesome but doesn't stay healthy all that much. They got Bulaga to play tackle. So, again, it's the same thing with anything. You give Tyrod Taylor or whomever is the quarterback there as good of a chance as any. We don't like Herbert or Love or any of the secondary, tertiary quarterbacks. So go with the most important position there. Try to lean in. Try to compete with Kansas City.
This is my big takeaway from this group, and it's a Chargers takeaway just like yours. Would you rather have the current Chargers team with Cam Newton and Jerry Jeudy or the current Chargers team with Justin Herbert?
It's not close.
It's not even remotely close. So to me, this is a no-brainer. And really everything else I think is pretty much as you would expect with the tackles going one after another. I don't know. I didn't know there were people outside, but apparently they're committing crimes here in DC. So now that the sirens have subsided, I actually think that could have been either Pence or Trump, because I'm here on 16th and it's a straight shot down to the White House one way and like up to where Pence lives, which is the Naval Observatory the other way. So like we get this all the time. Anyways, I digress. 11 through 15. Jets go CeeDee Lamb, wide receiver, Oklahoma. Vegas Raiders, Christian Fulton, cornerback, LSU. The Niners from the Indianapolis Colts take Jalen Reagor, wide receiver, TCU. Tampa Bay goes Grant Delpit, safety from LSU. And then at 15, the Denver Broncos go Laviska Shenault instead of Justin Jefferson, who we had been taking last time, wide receiver from Colorado. Thoughts here?
Well, I think positional value reigns supreme here with all players playing away from the ball. So, I think the best pick here, honestly, Tampa Bay, we talked about a team that not a terrible amount of holes. They get a safety here where they've really struggled in the past few years. And Delpit's a player who, you look at his pass breakup rate, it's pretty high. He just, his projections, have him making a lot of plays on the football, decent comps like Devin McCourty and Earl Thomas, which is really good to see. So, I can't complain anything here. San Francisco gets a wide receiver when I know we discussed possibly cornerback quite a bit to them.
Yeah, the thing that I wanted to talk about was we had a pretty long, spirited debate about the 49ers in this pick. And in the actual draft, I would not be surprised if one of CeeDee Lamb, Jerry Jeudy, or Henry Ruggs is available, which is amazing, right? Because you get one of those top three guys. And you figure if those guys are gone, well, then you're going to look to a different spot like cornerback. But I actually figure if you say, hey, we need to come away with a wide receiver, going with Jalen Reagor here gives you a much better chance at having a receiver that you feel confident can play. Whereas if you wait all the way to 31, at least in our mock draft where we're always the GM, we're going to value wide receiver highly. So that guy isn't going to be there later. Yeah. You better take him now. In the grand scheme of things, it could very well be the case that if those three guys are gone, those top three, you do take cornerback and you wait on a receiver and you still get a good one.
Yeah, I think this reigns a little bit more true if Sanders stays in San Francisco. But as a current, or Dante Pettis have been somebody that Shanahan didn't completely hate. Well, you like Kyle Shanahan quite a bit, so you're going to defer. I think Pettis is a playable player. I don't understand, why he wasn't playing over Kendrick Bourne, for example, which doesn't make. But he's not obviously somebody that Shanahan trusts, so they're not particularly deep at wide receiver. So it is important for them to get one because Jimmy G is a quarterback that I think is very dependent on circumstances. That being said, the Niners defense emerged last season because coverage was good, and it really supplemented what was already a great pass rush. You take away Buckner, you add in a little noise, namely Sherman is a year older, and there's a chance that their coverage goes down next year, even with the same cast of characters. And that's really the
good chance.
And that's the risk you want to avoid if you're San Francisco, and you want to be proactive about it. You don't want to have to trade let's say, you don't want to have to trade a second-round pick in the middle of the season for a defensive back who's disgruntled, because you're just not going to get a good price for that player at the time. You want to be the type of team that has, like, I make fun of the Vikings a lot, but I do think like the Mike Hughes draft pick was a really good draft pick. They had Waynes, they had Alexander, they had Rhodes, and as bad as their defense was fundamentally compared to 2017, they were still a top 10 defense in every metric because they had some anti-fragility built in there with some young players that were ready to step up. If the Niners, and the Niners had some of it last year with Mosley, the question becomes, how thin do you want to be there, and how much do you want to stockpile? Because I do think defense is still going to be their identity.
The interesting thing about it, though, is the Niners are, and Kyle Shanahan in particular, who you just kind of besmirched his good name, and I will not tolerate it. I think he has a very good reason for not wanting to play Dante Pettis. Is that he is an offensive coach. And so they need, as you said, an offensive environment that will allow him to do what he wants to do. And Kendrick Bourne is wide receiver 2, just does not do that. So Jalen Reagor is a guy who can stretch the field. He can do a lot of different things that I think will enhance Shanahan's system, like what Deebo Samuel did, right? He could do so many different things. And it felt weird putting Laviska Shenault in there because he's very similar to Deebo Samuel, but I think it's the same kind of thing. You get a player that's in there that can do a lot of different things, and that will allow Shanahan to get the most out of him. Okay, 16 through 20, the Atlanta Falcons. I think they might actually listen to us this time. I actually have faith. They took a cornerback. They took C.J. Henderson from Florida. Dallas at 17 takes your guy, Trayvon Diggs. Washington, now with this pick from Miami at 18, takes Ebra Cleveland, offensive tackle from Boise State. At 19, the Vegas Raiders take Justin Jefferson, wide receiver LSU. And then at 20, the talent-bereft Jacksonville Jaguars take Jeff Gladney, cornerback, TCU. The thing that stuck out to me here was both the Cowboys and the Falcons being teams that they are really good rosters. They're up here in the draft, and they get players of tremendous value at the cornerback position. I really liked both those picks.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think this was great in terms of, Atlanta needs to rebuild their defense. They already got rid of Desmond Trufant. Brian Poole was actually pretty good for the Jets last year. He was let go. And, Isaiah Oliver hasn't been the player that they wanted, as a higher round pick. So just, replenish. Dallas, the same thing. Dallas really, if you look at that roster, cornerback's a huge need, and they haven't done a ton there. Since losing Byron Jones. So they probably shouldn't be done with this pick at the position. The one pick I like the most is Justin Jefferson, though. I think Jefferson's the kind of player that when the Vegas Raiders become good, when they have a quarterback like Justin Fields or Trevor Lawrence in the future, Jefferson's going to be a huge value add to that team as a player from the slot. They can hit defenses with him and Darren Waller. I think that's going to be a huge boost for them.
Yeah, we actually consider Jefferson higher up because he was so good last year. And the question for me with him is that the dude was lined up out wide 5 whole times last year. 1,000 times he played a snap on the field, and 5 times he was out wide. So he's a slot-only guy, or at least you can't really make a projection on him playing outside wide receiver. You just know nothing about that. So you put him only in the slot, and there the value above replacement, I think, diminishes because so much of that is just the slot is easier to do well in because of the inability to put tight coverage on guys in the slot as frequently as you'd like. All right. 21 through 25, the Philadelphia Eagles take Denzel Mims, Sam Monson's boy, wide receiver from Baylor. Formerly your Minnesota Vikings, with the pick that they get from the Stephon Diggs trade, take Stephon Diggs. Oh, no, I mean T. Higgins. Sorry, Diggs not available in this draft, unfortunately, for Minnesota. T. Higgins, wide receiver, Clemson. The Patriots, we wanted to trade down for them. The tough thing is that we're also the GM of the other teams. So, we're not going to trade up to not take a quarterback. So they take Ashton Davis, safety from Cal. New Orleans, we go with Chase Claypool, wide receiver / tight end, Notre Dame. And then Minnesota with another pick in this group takes Cameron Dantzler, cornerback, Mississippi State. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, the Vikings get the corner and the wide receiver that they, didn't need a month ago and now need, like they need to breathe. Dantzler's slower, obviously, but he did compete well in the SEC. Zimmer likes those big, tall corners. I'm interested to see if the Vikings struggle this year and they have to go to a new regime post Zimmer, whether Dantzler will be that type of player who is very scheme dependent, moves around the league only to schemes that will accentuate his abilities. But for now, I like the New England pick of Ashton Davis because, they just got rid of Deron Harmon. And, Davis sort of is that really prototype deep safety. So that's a pretty good selection, I think, for them.
The Eagles pick was one that was very interesting because Jason Peters is still out there. Who knows if he ends up coming back? But if he doesn't, they're going to put Andre Dillard in their left tackle, I presume. But that's a question mark, right? You'd assume they think highly of him. They took him in the first round and traded up to get him, but he did not perform incredibly well in his one stint last year. So that's a question mark. But the biggest question mark by far is wide receiver. And the fact that they have no speed at wide receiver, no athletes there. Denzel Mims is one of the most athletic guys there and showed that he can run a pretty diverse route tree with his work at the Senior Bowl. This to me is a pick that kind of has the chance to elevate this team dramatically, given the value of the position. So that was my favorite pick out of this group. Yeah,
it's pretty good. It's not bad. The Eagles, I watched their All for Nothing this weekend, and it was like, oh my God, they were really going out there with J.J. Arcega-Whiteside and Greg Ward.
It's ridiculous. Was that better or worse than Tiger King?
Worse, but because Tiger King was just so amazing.
It's so good. I can't get over how crazy it is. All right, 26 through 30. Miami at 26 takes Jack Driscoll, tackle from Auburn. 27, another switch up here. The Seattle Seahawks take Kenny Robinson Jr., cornerback from the XFL. Safety from the XFL, formerly West Virginia. Baltimore takes Curtis Weaver, edge from Boise State. At 29, the Titans take Matt Pert, offensive tackle from UConn. And at 30, a guy that we didn't have in our original mock, our version 1, but now gets bumped in because we have one more offensive tackle being taken, is a guy that a lot of people really love as offensive tackle 1, 2, 3, or 4, Jedrick Wills from Alabama. What stuck out to you here? I'm assuming it's Kenny Robinson.
Yeah, I mean, as you know, I'm a pretty big junkie with respect to the XFL. Everybody's saying, he left a couple years early from West Virginia, was not eligible for last year's draft, wanted to transfer. I think he had some issues academically at West Virginia. Instead of actually transferring, he just went back and took care of his, mom who had cancer, and then joined the XFL's St. Louis Battlehawks, intercepted 2 of the 8 passes into his coverage, broke up, I think, 1 or 2 more. Really, flew around the field. Projections looked really good as well. And I honestly, to be, frank, we just didn't simply have him in the original list of draftable players until this came up. And then once we inserted him, he, looked extremely good. And, deep safety is a position that every team, I think, could benefit from. And here specifically, with the Seattle Seahawks.
This was maybe my favorite pick of the whole draft because we just watched the Seattle New England Patriots Super Bowl from 2014. And what really stuck out to me about that game was how that Seattle team was built around their ability to just stifle the opposing team's passing attack because of their tremendous coverage. And Earl Thomas was such a playmaker on the back end for them. Having a guy that can make plays at somewhere near that level is what they have been looking for quite some time, since Earl Thomas left. And so this to me is a wonderful pick for them, a tremendous value. At 27, you just don't expect to be able to get a guy that could potentially impact your coverage in that way. And I think people will be more leery of picking a guy like this because right now with the coronavirus situation, you aren't able to gather as much information on these guys. So I think someone that's less known, who's played in the XFL, he's kind of bounced all over, teams will be reticent to take. I could actually see Seattle being super into a guy with this kind of a background and this kind of a story more than other teams.
And he's not older in that sense. It's just that he played his last year in the XFL where he could have played. And so he was getting, I mean, the XFL coaching, you know, somewhere between good and bad, but you know, different than college.
31-32, the Super Bowl rematch. The San Francisco 49ers take Jalen Johnson, cornerback from Utah, and your Kansas City Chiefs, as they did in our first mock draft, take Davion Taylor, a linebacker from Colorado. So the Niners here, they go wide receiver at 13. They get a guy that our projections really, really like, that I remember Mike Renner talking about well over a year ago when he was prepping for last year's draft. Rager was someone that he really, really liked. And then Jalen Johnson is a guy who you think about how the Niners kind of continued their dominance despite, you know, kind of glitches in the system. Like Ahkello Witherspoon keeps the Vikings in the game in that NFC divisional for a quarter and a half. And Emmanuel Moseley, you don't expect Emmanuel Moseley to come in and just be a shutdown corner. But sometimes things work out for you. The thing with coverage is that it's so unstable that Emmanuel Moseley could come in next year and be below replacement level, and we shouldn't bat an eye because that's just something that is so volatile. So a guy like Jalen Johnson, who allowed a passer rating of under 60 throughout his career at Utah, a guy that was comped to William Jackson III by Mike Renner, who he doesn't throw comps around lightly. So to me, that meant something to me. A really strong first round for my 49ers.
Yeah, well, that's the thing is if you're bullish on some of these corners lower in the first round, then the San Francisco 49ers approach is a good one because, you know, if you can get a guy who's William Jackson-like and have him play sparingly early on and then eventually move into a starting role, or, you know, heaven forbid Richard Sherman decline a little bit and, you know, he takes snaps off of him, it's great that you have a player with a pedigree to do that. And that's, again, you know, what the smart teams do. You know, Cincinnati, when Zimmer was the DC and Marvin Lewis was the head, that's what they did. They drafted a corner seemingly every year in the first round. And then, you know, the Vikings did it for a few years in a row. And, you know, and that's kind of how you know, if you want to sustain good defense, you either get lucky with injuries or you are intentional about it. And this looks as an intentional pick for the 49ers.
What's interesting is, so comparing, and I think maybe this is how we close things out for this pod, is thinking about how our mock draft is going to be so different from what actually happens and where those advantages can be had. And then this is actually one where I think this can happen. I have seen multiple people talk about, hey, maybe you take Christian Fulton at the end of the first round. You know, maybe the Chiefs take him instead of a running back and get kind of crazy with it. If that's really something that is possible, like Christian Fulton is he's not Jeff Okudah, but he's at least squeaking into that tier, and then there's a pretty decent drop-off. If that's the case, that he's really falling to the bottom of the first round, then the Niners' approach of going receiver corner, I'll be sans shirt and pants by the time we close out round one, if that's the case.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. It's like when you're a team, there's not a whole lot of opportunity in this draft because the teams are all, in our opinion, acting optimally. But where the opportunity hits is when the Raiders take Josh Jacobs at 24, or the Vikings take Garrett Bradbury at whatever, 20 or 19 or wherever they took him last year. And if you're a fan of a team that you trust to do the right thing, that's a great thing. That's an opportunity to have a pretty good you know, to have a pretty good draft.
I also think, you know, the place where we're going to be super different from, you know, the overall what actually happens is at the top, right? Like with the, you know, us taking a wide receiver at 4, and I got pretty riled up, you know, calling people idiots for not, you know, for arguing with us about edge versus receiver. I understand that that's a long thought of opinion, right? That edge is just so much more valuable than receiver. But I would challenge people to think about this more critically. Like, conventional wisdom gets proven ridiculous and is often thought of many years later as being ridiculous. You know, be on the forefront instead of just following along with what's been said for 50 years.
Yeah, that's the thing. I mean, Nick Bosa had a great impact on the San Francisco 49ers, but he had less of one than Deebo Samuel did. And, Myles Garrett, the Browns have never had a winning season despite drafting him first overall in the year that other teams got Deshaun Watson and Patrick Mahomes. Jadeveon Clowney hasn't won anything in his career. You sort of think about it, and
I mean, Khalil Mack.
You got it. Well, Khalil Mack's never won anything in his career. The thing about it is you have to solve the important problems first, and once you're done with that, maintain. Right. So again, we're talking about the Niners. They just got rid of DeForest Buckner, and we're talking about them maintaining a good secondary, right? Maintenance in that spot, and then splurge on the other positions, right? That can take you from great to great to best, right? Don't lose the forest for the trees here. If you don't have a quarterback, or you don't know if your quarterback's any good, then it's time to invest in that player. And I think a wide receiver high does that. And for a defense, if you have a tip-top edge player, invest in that edge player by getting him coverage players.
Oh, it's a great point. And it's one that I think people will just continue to make fun of us for. And honestly, here's my opinion. If you put something out that is a strong opinion, whether it's data backed or not, and you get a bunch of people agreeing with you and not very many thinking you're crazy, you're probably wrong. Like that, you're probably dead wrong. So it actually kind of makes me feel good that there are so many people with Giants in their bio or their handle that really hate this pick.
Well, like I said, it'll be one of those things where if Daniel Jones doesn't take off, they'll be complaining that they didn't get a wide receiver here's a question. Where would Sammy Watkins be if he were in the free agency pool right now at wide receiver?
Oh, it's a really good question. Because I could see it both ways. I could see some team drastically overpaying him because of two plays that they saw.
Yep.
But I could
also his
see
talent.
Sure, but it's been a while, like it's not.
Yeah.
I don't know. Do you think someone would have signed him ahead of Robbie Anderson?
Right. So my friend Seren Petro asked me on the air what's holding them up. Why haven't the Chiefs agreed to either cut Sammy Watkins or restructure his contract? And I think that the Chiefs see value in Sammy Watkins. They kept him here. And Watkins group sees I think he would have been the second highest paid behind Amari Cooper. And so currently Watkins' number is like 19, 20 million, which is exactly the APY for Amari Cooper. And so Watkins camp, like there's no incentive for them to get anything done with Kansas City other than a hometown discount, right? And, he could go. And so Giants fans are going to be like, well, why didn't we just sign a wide receiver? Why didn't we just sign a wide receiver? Why didn't we draft one in the second round? It's like, no, the solution's right in front of you. If you sign a wide receiver, you're going to sign Sammy Watkins to be your number one. You really want that? Or you can draft Henry Ruggs at 4, or Jerry Jeudy at 4, or CeeDee Lamb at 4 and be happy, or trade back and get them later. But like the solution's right there for you. And that's going to impact your team way better for that price point than anything else.
That's really interesting. I didn't even think about your boy Sammy, but you're always thinking about Sammy because your dog's name is Sammy. So
yeah,
I guess there's that. All right, so you can go to pff.com and read about this. There's also a bunch of stuff that we link in here because you've written a ton of really, really insightful draft content. It is, I think, just about every other guy on this list has a deep dive that you can read. Austin Gale's deep dive on Trayvon Diggs, really, really good and interesting. If you're a Dallas Cowboys fan, I suggest you check that out. I have a story. I have a very sad story for you to close this out. So as I told you, I have been lucky because I'm here in DC, and my apartment building in Cincinnati, they've closed the gym. They've shut it down. They sent an angry email out saying, we noticed some missing gym equipment. If you could please return it to the closed gym, we'd appreciate it. Jeepers. So at my girlfriend's apartment building here in DC, they've kept the gym open with like spray bottles of the strongest antiseptic you can find and an endless supply of paper towels so that you can scrub everything down. They have a bunch of guidelines, but they've kept it open. So it's been great because I've been able to go and get like a facsimile of a decent workout in. Today, they have shut it down. And I don't know what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna be the guy outside on the sidewalk, like, doing 100,000 air squats to try and get a workout in. I don't know what I'm gonna be picking up like tree logs and trash cans. And
why don't you just push? Sight. Why don't you? You and your girlfriend don't have a car though, right? Neither one of you.
No.
Or does she have one?
She does not.
Because you could push a car.
Push a car? Oh, that'd be good. That'd be good. I mean, we do have some friends in DC that have motor vehicles, so I could potentially film myself becoming a top 5 offensive tackle prospect.
My workouts have been very like prison, like the push-ups, sit-ups, and then the walk around the block. I'm trying to come out of here like in better shape than beginning. I think a few steps forward, a few steps back. We'll see. So
there are a couple takeaways that I have from this whole quarantine process that have triggered me particularly. The first one is because we're all quarantined, you now really want to see me do like 15 push-ups kind of shittily. And we've already talked about this. That one is awful. But the one that has really gotten me now is the Zoom or Skype or Slack or whatever it is, happy hours. And then showing people that you're doing it. I could not give it even the slightest fuck. And and what I think is funny about that is I think a lot of people are doing the same thing you're saying, which is, oh, now that I'm quarantined, I'm going to become a chess grandmaster. I'm going to get in better shape, all these self-improvement things. And all they're really doing is having more happy hours. That's my rant.
Yeah, I think so. But this, like I said, we're trying to make light of this situation. It does suck. But I do think that it is a nice little reset button, right? For some things. But I do think the majority, my thing, I was talking about this with my friend the other day, and I said, I think people are trying to cope in their own different ways, right? So far be it for me to like judge people, but it is funny how bad people are at push-ups.
It's actually really sad. I'm coping with it by with 3 things: Tiger King, tequila, and ice cream.
My 3 things are USFL games on YouTube.
Oh my God.
Gambling on Madden Sims, and push-ups. You
didn't have an alcohol in there?
Well,
God, sad.
See, but I'm trying to lose weight, George. I'm trying to get more in shape,
Yeah.
When we come out of this, we got to start playing basketball again. And
Well, I'll be ready because now the only thing I can do is go outside and sprint.
Right.
All right, that is our show. We'll be back on Thursday. We'll hopefully have the live stream going by then. Big shout out to our stand-in producer for the day, Mike Quinn, who's doing an excellent job.
Yep.
Stay sane over there in prison, okay? Peace.
You want to get rid of me and get back to more great PFF YouTube content? All you have to do is push that button right there and subscribe. Thanks for watching.